Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn chapter 17 from your Sunday school book. The name of the chapter is Jeroboam, and the memory verse which you have to by heart is Proverbs 10 words 19 to 21. When words are many, sin is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked has little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for the lack of judgment. It is a very wonderful memory verse. Please, children, you by heart this memory verse. Now we will do a quick recap here. In the last chapter, we saw how David became king all over Israel. Now, before his death, he made Solomon his successor. Now, in this chapter, we will learn about Jeroboam. Now, you would be wondering, who is Jeroboam? Well, he was one of Solomon's officials. Jeroboam was the first king of Israel. After division, he was the son of Naboth, an Ephraimite of Zeredah, and his mother was Zeruiah. Now Solomon had laborers who were doing some construction work in Jerusalem. And Jeroboam was among them. He was a man of great valor. And after Solomon saw how well the young man did his work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the tribes of Joseph. So the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh would have looked to Jeroboam as a leader and someone who could speak to the king on their behalf. Now, one time what happened, Jeroboam was coming out of Jerusalem. On the way, he met prophet Ahijah. Ahijah was wearing a new robe. As soon as he saw Jeroboam, he tore his new garment into 12 pieces. And he gave 10 pieces to Jeroboam, and he said to him, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give you 10 tribes. But 2 tribes will be serving Solomon and his descendants." Now, why did this happen, children? Have you ever thought about this? That why suddenly God is doing this? God is taking out the kingdom from Solomon's hand and giving it to his servant. Now, Solomon did something that was sinful in the eyes of God. Solomon's heart turns away from God. Now, Solomon, in order to buy peace with the neighboring kingdoms, some were more powerful than his kingdom. So, what he did was he married the daughters of the kings. And in this process, his wife, they brought idol worship, which caused his downfall. Solomon turned away from God and he served Shemosh, the god of Moab, Ashtaroth, the god of Sidon, and Milcom, the god of Ammon. God was very angry with Solomon that he did not keep his commandments. So God told him, "Since this is your attitude, you have not kept my covenant and my decree, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates, one of your servants." Now, Jeroboam was this subordinate. And when Solomon came to know about this prophecy, he tried to kill Jeroboam. Jeroboam was scared and he fled to Egypt, to King Shishak, and was there until the death of Solomon. What do we learn from this, children? Sin usually increases through neglect and compromise over time. It doesn't happen in just a minute. It takes time. Solomon's example should serve as an instruction for us, for God's people, not to compromise with his commandments, with his revealed ways, with his precepts. And especially, we should shun intermarriage with anyone who is not spiritually like minded. Now, after that, how did Rehoboam becomes the king of Israel? We'll see that. Now, after the death of Solomon, Israel gathered to make his son Rehoboam king. As soon as Jeroboam came to know that Solomon has departed from this world, he came to Israel. Now, the people wanted Rehoboam to treat them less harshly than his father. Actually, King Solomon was respected and loved, but the people thought his demands were hard. Keep in mind, children, that King Solomon had to use thousands and thousands of laborers for his great works, and he put heavy taxes on them as well. So the people of Israel told Rehoboam, his son, that if he makes things easier for them, they would honor and serve him as king. Rehoboam went to Solomon's advisor for advice. And when they told him to lighten the load, he then sought advice from his personal group of advisors. Now, these personal group of advisors, they were very young. They grew with him. They were not that experienced. And they told him to make things harder on the people. And instead of listening to Solomon's old advisors, he gave heed to the young and naive advisors. He told people that he would make things miserable under his rule. And when people realized what he has said to them, they turned away from him. Now they had to make one person their king. And soon they understood that they can make Jeroboam their spokesman who spoke on his or on their behalf as king. In this way, 10 tribes went with Jeroboam, and they came to know as Israel, while the other two tribes that followed Rehoboam came to be known as Judah. And the kingdom was divided into northern and southern kingdoms. Now Rehoboam became very angry. So he made plans to war against Jeroboam. But God, through his prophecy, through prophet Shemaiah, resisted that move. Now we'll see how Jeroboam establishes his kingdom. Now, God told something to Jeroboam before that. God told him, if you do whatever I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David and will give Israel to you. Now, God made a conditional promise to Jeroboam. If Jeroboam obeyed God, he would have a kingdom that lasts. Now, Jeroboam reigned from Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim. But people used to go to Jerusalem for worship. But somewhere Jeroboam was scared that what if people go to Jerusalem and they mingle with Rehoboam and his people and they get attracted to them and leave me? So what he did, he told the people that it was too much for them to travel so far to Jerusalem to worship God. Sometimes the enemy of our souls, Satan, tells us the same thing, that it's difficult to obey God. Children, when that lie is whispered to our hearts, remember what God's word says. First John 5 verse 3. This is the love for God, to obey his commands, and his commands are not burdensome. His commands gives us life. What did Jeroboam do? He built two shrines in Bethel and in Dan and placed two golden calves in each shrine and told people that this is the God who saved them from Egypt. This was a great sin in the eyes of God. Jeroboam made a wicked, foolish decision to have Israel worship idols. Instead of being remembered as a king who honored and obeyed God, he would always be remembered for his wickedness. Jeroboam goes against God. Now, Jeroboam has built his own temple, his own idols, and he was worshipping them. One day, when he went to the temple to burn incense on the altar, a man of God came from Judah and prophesied against his altar. When King Jeroboam heard what the man of God cried out against the altar at Bethel, he stretched out his hand from the altar and said, "Seize him." But the hand he stretched out toward the man shriveled up so that he could not pull it back. Also, the altar was split apart and its ashes poured out according to the sign given by the man of God. Then the king said to the man of God, "Intercede with the Lord your God and pray for me that my hand may be restored." So the man prayed and his hand was restored. The king was very happy. He said, "Come to my home. I'll give you something to eat and I'll also reward you for this." But the man of God answered the king, "Even if you were to give me half your possessions, I would not go with you, nor would I eat bread or drink water here, because I was commanded by the Lord that you should not eat bread or drink water or return by the way you came." So he took another road, but on the way he met an old prophet who deceived him so that he can eat food from his house. And as he disobeyed the commandment of God, he was killed by a lion. Even after this, Jeroboam did not change his evil ways, and this led to wiping out his whole family from the face of earth. Jeroboam is punished. Now, children, soon Jeroboam's son Ahijah, he became very sick. Jeroboam came to know that God has turned his face away from him. So he sent his wife to prophet Ahijah. Now, before her arrival, God revealed all their tricks to Ahijah. Jeroboam wanted to know what is going to happen, what is the future of his son and his country. Prophet Ahijah prophesied that the house of Jeroboam would be exterminated, and dogs would eat whoever belonged to Jeroboam, and birds would eat whoever dies in the field, and none of them will come to the grave except for the child who was sick. That means none of them will receive the grace to be buried in a grave except the child who was sick. And exactly that happened, children. Jeroboam's son died and he was buried in the grave. Jeroboam's end. Now, Abijah became the second king of Judah in the 18th year of Jeroboam's reign. Abijah is a descendant of David. Now, he began to fight against Jeroboam with his 400,000 men. But Jeroboam had very good people on his side. He had capable men, 800,000 choice men with him. But Abijah had the support of priests and the grace of God with him. So he declared that with the help of God, he would destroy Jeroboam. Jeroboam was very smart. He planned to attack Abijah's army simultaneously from the front and from the back. But the children of Judah, they came to know about his plan. And they cried out to God. God heard their prayers and delivered Jeroboam and his men into their hands. The men of Israel was defeated, they were defeated, and Abijah pursued Jeroboam, but he escaped. After some time, Lord struck Jeroboam with a disease and he died. He reigned in Israel for 22 years. Now, we have come to the end of this chapter, children. What do we learn about Jeroboam? What message does this lesson give to us? That the heart that fully seeks the Lord pleases Him. We should never deviate from God's commandments. We should never go astray from His ways. Now, Jeroboam had so much opportunities. God gave him so many options, lifted him from being a servant to a king, beyond his wildest dreams. Yet he chose to go his own way and become cursed. Do we understand this? That how dangerous it is to walk away from the Lord's ways? So read the memory verse, by heart it, and keep it in your heart, and follow it all the days of your life. I would like to conclude this lesson by this message. Please, children, share it with your friends, like, subscribe the video. I'll see you with a new chapter in the coming week. May God bless you all. Be home, be safe.